is Balance of Power, live from Washington, D.C.
From Bloomberg's Washington, D.C. studios to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, welcome to Balance of Power. Alongside Julie Fine, I'm Joe Matthew. Tonight, a court order on layoffs amid the government shutdown, a seesawing market, and a Supreme Court poised to gut the Voting Rights Act. The highest court in the land casting doubt on the use of race in drawing voting maps in the U.S. The reaction from Washington tonight as the nation's landmark civil rights law faces uncertainty.
Plus, the government shutdown continues on as the White House budget chief warns of more than 10,000 layoffs during the closure. More on that, plus the ruling today as a federal judge blocks the administration's attempted layoffs when Congressman and chair of the Democratic caucus Pete Aguilar and Republican Congressman of Texas Michael McCaul join us.
Concerns about a trade war and speculation that a pause is warranted, making for a volatile trading session today after a $28 trillion bull market run. As Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent calls for an end of the World Bank's support for China just before the president made his admission about the U.S.'s standoff with Beijing. Listen.
Are we in for a sustained trade war with China?
Well, you're in one now. Look, we have 100% tariff. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be exposed as being a nothing. We would have no defense.
But we begin this evening with a federal judge blocking the Trump administration's plans to lay off thousands of federal workers during the government shutdown. Judge Susan Ilston saying the administration must halt its layoffs less than a week after reduction in force notices went out. That order today coming only hours after Budget Chief Russ Vought said that more than 10,000 federal employees should be expected to be permanently laid off during the government closure. For details on that, plus a very important day before the Supreme Court, we turn now to Bloomberg's Greg Stohr, who joins us live here in our Washington bureau. Greg, it's great to see you. This is yet another instance of the courts acting as a check on the executive.
Well, at least the lower courts.
Yeah.
A lot of times these cases get up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has different ideas. But yes, it is a federal district judge temporarily, and this is only a temporary restraining order that lasts about 2 weeks, saying, no, you can't fire these people, at least until I look into the matter more closely.
And while the courts are looking at that, they're also looking at redistricting today in Louisiana, something that's being eyed nationally with all of the redistricting in several states.
Yeah, huge Voting Rights Act case, as Joe mentioned at the top, at the Supreme Court today. So this is basically the biggest remaining aspect of the Voting Rights Act, which is a law the Supreme Court has undermined a couple times previously. And this is all about whether legislators, in some cases, need to draw majority black, majority Hispanic districts in cases where, without that district, there would be discrimination against racial minorities.
So this is the end of majority-minority districts, as we call them, as they go after Section 2 here. There are some who think that as many as 19 House seats could be impacted. I know you're not a political analyst, Greg, but those are the stakes we're talking about.
Those are potentially the stakes and the way that it would come about. Now, this is a case about one district in Louisiana.
Yeah.
But if the Supreme Court rules, if it rules quickly enough, other states that have districts that were drawn this way because of the Voting Rights Act might go back and say, as they have in Texas, we're going to do a mid-decade redistricting. We're going to redraw our lines and carve out that district so that we don't have that district anymore. And the liberal groups are estimating that it could be more than a dozen seats that are affected for that reason.
Pretty big stuff, Greg. Thank you so much. Bloomberg's Greg Stohr with us in Washington. And on this 15th day of the government shutdown, if you're still keeping count, lawmakers on both sides remain at an impasse. This morning, House Speaker Mike Johnson reaffirming his message about who he believes is at fault for the closures. Take a listen.
It is the Democrat leadership that is eating up the clock, and they are doing great harm to the American people, not just by suspending services, vital services and paychecks, but also because of the backlog of work that the Congress has to get done. And we cannot do it while hardworking Americans are suffering because of these antics. And that's why we're demanding, insisting that they get it open.
Joining us now with his perspective live from Capitol Hill is Democratic Congressman Pete Aguilar of California. He's chair of the House Democratic Caucus, making his debut here on Bloomberg TV and radio. Mr. Chairman, welcome. It's great to have you as part of our conversation. I'm wondering what your thoughts are. We've really illustrated the arguments on both sides here. Speaker Johnson was with us as well as Leader Jeffries just in the last week. I'm just curious your thought on what appears to be this new position by Republicans on both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue to hunker down for the long term. The president finding workarounds for pay for military, pay for federal law enforcement, now funding the WIC program. Did he just remove all the potential off-ramps here in the weeks ahead?
Well, it's pretty clear that he has removed some, and it's pretty clear that Republicans will do anything they can not to negotiate with Democrats. They're willing to go through all these steps, do all these things, and the one thing that we're asking them to do is to come back to the table. Come back to the table and let's talk about the importance of health care to the American people. That's what we've asked. We'll go anywhere. We'll talk to them in any format, in any setting. That's what Leader Jeffries has asked. And time again, the Speaker has said no. Yeah, just yesterday, he says he has no strategy. His members have called it an embarrassment that they're not coming back to town. This is the third week in a row that Republicans have not been in session. To have a government shutdown and to not be here is pretty shameful. And I hope that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle come to their senses and at least come to town and talk with us.
I know Hakeem Jeffries called everyone back to at least be present and have conversations like this. I don't know if you're having meetings behind the scenes or if you're all, kind of looking at each other as Democrats in the House right now. Congressman, we got a pretty important ruling from a lower court we were just discussing, blocking the president's attempt to fire thousands of federal workers who have been furloughed. That's only a 2-week, a temporary stay, if you will. Is there anything that Democrats plan to do to get involved in the firing of federal workers?
Well, we continue to support our federal workforce. We have, and we will continue to do that in the future. Obviously, appreciate the judge stepping in here, but as your reporter mentioned, this is just temporary. This is just for a small amount of time here. But nothing has stopped Donald Trump from continuing the chaos over the last 10 months when it comes to our federal workforce. He uses the federal workforce as pawns. 200,000 have left during DOJ, over 50,000 have been fired already. So this is nothing new to the workforce. They know that they're under attack, and it's unfortunate. These are folks who work at our airports, they work in our public lands and our public parks, or they work for FEMA. I mean, all of these folks have a job to do, an important job for the American people, and it's sad that Donald Trump continues to use them as political pawns.
Congressman, as you saw earlier, the Speaker has not brought anybody back. So are you having any trouble keeping the caucus unified, or are they good with this strategy right now to essentially say, yeah, we'll be happy to meet anywhere, anytime, but yet the Republicans are not meeting?
Well, Democrats were here. We had a caucus meeting last night that I presided over. We had one earlier today as well that I presided over. Democrats are here. We're willing to work. We're willing to show the American people that we want Republicans to come back to the table. 25 days. The American public could not be home for 25 days. Yet House Republicans, that's their strategy. The number of days we've actually been in session since they passed their big ugly law has been less than 20. I mean, so this is just really, I agree with my Republican colleague from California who called it an embarrassment. It really is unfortunate that they don't even want to be here in town to have these discussions. But House Democrats are unified. We're talking about the importance of the American people, the importance of delivering health care for folks in our community. We know the stakes are big. We know that people are getting notices that their premiums are going up all over the country. Open enrollment starts for the Affordable Care Act. And oh, by the way, millions of Republicans, millions of people in Republican states utilize the Affordable Care Act. We're fighting for everyone, whether you're in a red state, a blue state, or a purple state. We're fighting for your health care. That's what House Democrats are here in town. That's what we're here talking about.
I want to bring this to your home state of California right now, where they're making a decision regarding redistricting. That's on the ballot right now. You have said that you are in favor of it. Do you think there will be the support?
Yes, I'm confident that Prop 50 has the support of Californians. This is something that, we didn't want to be in this position when it comes to redistricting, but the president making calls to governors around the country has forced us in a position because we know Donald Trump's ideas are so unpopular. The only way that he avoids accountability and oversight from Congress is to try to rig the congressional elections before they even happen. And so that's why he called Greg Abbott and asked for 5 seats. That's why J.D. Vance is getting Air Force 2 ready to fly to Indiana, just like he did this last weekend. They're asked 1 seat from Missouri, 2 from Indiana, more from Ohio and Florida coming, North Carolina, 1 seat as well. They know that they can't win, so they're going to redistrict just for political purposes. And California is saying enough is enough. And our citizens, our voters in California are ready for that fight, and they're ready to push back against Donald Trump. Overwhelmingly, there hasn't been a single poll that shows the no side having success. The yes side is doing incredibly well. They're up on TV. They're communicating a message. President Obama cut an ad that is played all over the state this week. The yes side has a lot of momentum, and I'm confident that we're going to have success at the ballot on November 4th.
Well, this plays right into the case that the Supreme Court began hearing arguments on today. Congressman, I'm sure it's got your attention. Certainly got the attention of your governor, Gavin Newsom, who posted on X today that Trump is about to steal nearly 20 more seats in Congress. He writes the Supreme Court is poised to wipe away the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and eliminate representation for black and brown communities across our country. Indeed, Mr. Chairman, the headline on the Bloomberg terminal today is Supreme Court cast doubt on use of race to draw voting maps. Some suggest that it could affect more than a dozen seats in the House. If this ruling goes down, goes against the 1965 Voting Rights Act, will Republicans maintain their majority in the House? Because the math seems prohibitive.
Well, it's too soon to tell when the Supreme Court would rule and what they would rule. But I think it's important to note, as you did in the lead-in, the Voting Rights Act is the bedrock of our democracy. I mean, this was founded as a result of huge inequity within our country that still exists. And the Supreme Court casting doubt that this is just, a temporary measure whose time has come is just absolutely, it's fundamentally wrong. But there's no question, given what Republicans have done over the last few months, that if there is a favorable ruling, they're going to act to engineer a political advantage, again, because they want to avoid accountability and oversight of Donald Trump. That's exactly what they've done. That's what their track record shows, and it's deeply unfortunate. And it comes at the expense of black and brown communities. And so that's what Democrats are pushing back against. And we'll see what the ruling, what timeline for the ruling comes. But we're going to continue to fight to represent every single person we can, whether you're in a red district, a blue district, or a purple district, or a red state. Just like we've done with health care, we're fighting for the American people, irrespective of the state that you live in.
We're also seeing Democratic mayors and Democratic governors fighting the president when it comes to National Guard troops. They've been in your state. Yesterday, we heard the president mention Boston. He was concerned that that was becoming more violent. So my question to you is, what can Democrats do? Is really their only recourse the courts at this point, as the president continues to send the National Guard troops and Congress has not gotten involved?
Well, what we hope is that Republicans start speaking out against this. This is a clear violation of posse comitatus, but until Republican legislators speak out against it, the only recourse we have is in the courts. And the courts have given some rulings, some have been temporary in nature, but that has to be one leg of the stool that we continue to utilize to push back. But oftentimes these cases will end up in the highest court of the land in the shadow docket, and will be decided in Donald Trump's favor without any explanation or any justification. And that's incredibly wrong, but that's exactly what this court has done. But I think our local cities, as a former mayor, I believe in local control, and our local cities and states should absolutely speak up and should absolutely utilize the courts to sue Donald Trump, because there should not be a military presence in the streets of our communities. People can have discussions and debates about the role of law enforcement, whether there's too much or too little law enforcement. I'm a strong supporter of local law enforcement, and we need the revenue streams to pay for law enforcement at the local level. But Donald Trump placing military members in our streets is just wrong, and it's a violation of our laws.
Well, you've, of course, heard the president say that L.A. would have burned to the ground if he had not sent National Guard troops into Los Angeles, and he's gone further. Julie just mentioned his suggestion for the city of Boston. He talked about maybe stripping Boston of the FIFA tournament. He's also talking about stripping L.A. of the 2028 Olympics, suggesting that crime may be too rampant and that sanctuary city policies would keep the Olympics from taking place there. What are you, the members of the delegation, the governor, planning to do to protect the Olympics in 28?
Look, it's just I'm trying not to laugh, Joe, honestly. I mean, it is absolutely laughable. Go to Los Angeles, meet me in Los Angeles. Let's catch a Dodger game for the championship series. It is completely fine and safe. There was a couple square blocks where there was some unrest, and local law enforcement had that under control, literally 2 square blocks. In Chicago, just this last weekend, as Donald Trump says it's a terrible place to be, how many thousands of people showed up for the Chicago Marathon and ran downtown? I mean, this is ridiculous, and I think people understand that. We're so proud and privileged to have the LA 28 Olympics coming to Los Angeles, and I'm confident there will be federal investment. There has been federal investment, local coordination with our law enforcement partners. It's going to be a safe and pleasant experience for everybody visiting from across the world.
We appreciate your time, Democratic Congressman Pete Aguilar of California. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you both.
Coming up, we'll continue our conversation on the ongoing government shutdown with a view from across the aisle with Republican Congressman Michael McCaul of Texas. But first, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is floating the idea of a longer China trade truce on rare earths right before the president's China trade war admission. We'll bring you the details next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
As we look ahead, we believe this quarter's performance continues to reflect the impact of the investments we have made on a continuous basis for many years in technology, talent, and client experience. These continue to translate into strong financial results. We have been growing loans with the right risk and deposits as we continue to gain market share through organic growth. That translated into continuous NII improvements and complement our growth in our fee-based businesses this quarter.
It's Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Alongside Julie Fine, I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. That was Bank of America Chairman CEO Brian Moynihan a bit earlier today. After the bank's third quarter earnings beat estimates before the bell, the boost came from a surge in investment banking activity amid a comeback in M&A and net interest income, which topped analyst estimates. And for more details, we turn to Power Moves with Bloomberg's Katie Greifeld, who joins us from World Headquarters in New York. Katie?
Well, it certainly was Wall Street that was the star of the show today when it comes to individual earnings moves. You take a look at Bank of America, as you mentioned, investment banking revenue. It actually rose 43% to $2.05 billion. Analysts were looking for $1.65 billion, so a big beat there. And then you consider the fees that they earned actually from advising on M&A. Pretty stunning to see them soar 51% to $583 million. So an update for Bank of America, but Morgan Stanley also bears talking about that 4.7% increase. I believe that's good for an all-time high when it comes to that Morgan Stanley finish there. Stock traders really beating expectations in a big way. You saw revenue from trading stocks surge 35% for Morgan Stanley to $4.12 billion in the third quarter. For context, analysts had just been looking for an increase of 6.6%, so really knocking it out of the park there, actually surpassing Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is the incumbent when it comes to equity trading, but Goldman notched just a pedestrian $3.74 billion from that business. So Morgan Stanley even outshining Goldman when it comes to trading equities this quarter.
And Katie, United also reporting today. What can you tell us about their earnings?
I got to say, Julie, it's a tough crowd because initially we saw the numbers came out and it looks good when you take a look at revenue coming in at $15.23 billion. That is just slightly below expectations. It was the guide that a lot of folks were excited about initially when you take a look at the fourth quarter adjusted EPS guide between $3 to $3.50. Previous estimates had been for just $2.82, so a big raise there. You can see that the stock has turned lower after hours. Part of the reason why could be just that Delta's performance last week really raised the bar for United. The consolidated load factor, let me tell you what that means. That's the percentage of seats filled by paying passengers. That was 84.4% in the quarter for United. That is lower than the average estimate of about 85%. And for context, Delta reported a load factor of 86% last week. So a little bit of disappointment, but we'll have to hear more, of course, from the company itself.
Bloomberg's Katie Greifeld, thanks so much for being with us. Great to see you. And markets also responded to comments from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent this morning after floating a longer tariff truce for China over rare earths. Take a listen.
Right now, we are currently in a 90-day roll on the tariffs. So is it possible that we could go to a longer roll in return for a delay? Perhaps. But all that's going to be negotiated in the coming weeks.
Now, President Trump just moments ago had his own perspective on the state of trade with China. Take a listen to what he had to say during this exchange with a reporter.
Are we in for a sustained trade war with China?
Well, you're in one now. Look, we have 100% tariff. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be exposed as being a nothing. We would have no defense.
Joining us now for a look into the impact of these remarks is Bloomberg's Mike Shepard, who joins us live here in our Washington bureau. Okay, Mike, after hearing all of that, where do the negotiations really stand right now?
Well, it's a great question because there are so many other things that went said today by U.S. officials, including Scott Bessent himself, who also applied some tough language to China when it comes to this question of where things stand. He was accusing China of yesterday, he said, aiming a bazooka at the global supply chain. And this morning, he also said that one of the Chinese officials in their trade negotiations had become unhinged. Now, this question is all touched off by what China did last week, and that was moving to impose export controls on rare earth minerals. And these are critical elements across the supply chain here in the U.S. and around the world. They go into automobiles, they go into consumer electronics, even military equipment. So it's a sensitive issue for the U.S. government and for companies, and investors are paying close attention to the outcome of this. Now, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer expressed some skepticism about whether China would follow through, but there is, with its actual imposition of these export curbs, given the potential impact. But nonetheless, it is a huge concern for officials here in Washington.
If the U.S. has an equivalent to rare earths that China needs that badly, maybe NVIDIA chips, advanced AI chips would be among them. I never thought used cooking oil would be, though. Well, that's what the president came back with yesterday.
That's what the president responded with yesterday, Joe. But you really hit the nail on the head when you brought up those NVIDIA chips. Because one of the things that China has been hoping to get out of these negotiations with the U.S. is a relaxation of some of those export curbs on American origin advanced technology, especially semiconductors like those made for AI by NVIDIA and AMD, but also some of the manufacturing equipment from the Dutch company ASML, from Tokyo Electron, that goes into producing these advanced AI chips. And those are subject now to export controls owing to their sensitivity. Now, whether all of this can fit on one table as the negotiators sit down to talk remains an open question. And we're looking ahead to that Trump-Xi meeting as well.
Only weeks away. Bloomberg's Mike Shepard. Thank you, Shep, as always. Coming up, the government shutdown reaching a third week now with no end in sight. We'll bring you our conversation with Republican Congressman Michael McCaul of Texas. It's next on Balance of Power, Bloomberg TV and Radio.
No one on the Republican side is taking any pleasure in this scenario. Yes, we're always for reducing the size and scope of the government and all of that, but this is not the way to go about it. We don't shut the government down, turn off the funding streams, and then require all these cuts like this.
House Democrats are here, reporting for duty. We are ready, we are willing, and we are able to negotiate a bipartisan spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people.
It's Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio alongside Julie Fine. I'm Joe Matthew. We're live in Washington, where House Speaker Mike Johnson and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries spoke at dueling news conferences earlier today as the government shutdown enters its third week. Lawmakers remaining at an impasse here, with more government programs expected to be on the chopping block. For the latest, we turn to Bloomberg's Erik Wasson, who joins us live from Capitol Hill and has been with us each step of the way in this shutdown. It's Groundhog Day up there, Erik. I'm having trouble finding a headline because Democrats and Republicans simply aren't talking. What's new for you?
Well, the newest thing is that the president signed an order to pay the military troops using, 2-year funding for military research. Experts I talked to say this is completely illegal. It violates the Anti-Deficiency Act, but of course it would be Trump's own Justice Department that would have to prosecute officials for doing it. So again, the president is really stretching the ability of the executive to sort of shape appropriations laws, and that in itself perpetuates a shutdown because Democrats say they need guarantees, perhaps legal provisions, to prevent the executive branch from overriding the will of Congress. We're expecting on Friday that the president will release a list of programs he wants to permanently end. I talked to Democrats. They say he has no power to do that. And the fact that they're going forward with this agenda of layoffs and ending programs further alienates them. When I talk to Democrats, from moderate to liberals, they all say the shutdown is going to last for a long time because there's no trust on either side, and there's no sign that Republicans are coming around to meeting core demands, such as extending these expiring Obamacare subsidies.
Erik, I have a question. We just talked to Congressman Aguilar, who said that his group, the Democrats, they are very united. Republicans seem very united as well. You heard the House Speaker talk about that earlier. Are you sensing any cracks in the armor on either side?
I'm really not. I mean, there are a handful of moderate Republicans in the House who've signed on to this 1-year Obamacare extension, but it's only 12 to 14 members who are really vocal about it. That's a small fraction of the 220 Republican conference. So, when Republicans, leaders talk about potential talks later on, there's probably going to be a long list of demands, including abortion restrictions, including green lighting, what Democrats would call junk plans, junk options for consumers to buy. So, there's just a hardening of the positions on both sides. I'm not seeing any real cracks, but, we have a story out by my colleague Jack Fitzpatrick on Bloomberg Government, maybe November 1st, when these Obamacare open enrollment period notices really start to go out and, the public starts to apply some pressure to Republicans about these premium increases. We might see some movement. But otherwise, Senator Kennedy saying this could be a record shutdown. The record right now is 35 days, so we very well could be into, mid-November or beyond here.
Erik, we appreciate you being with us during this shutdown as you waited out. Thanks so much. And earlier this afternoon, we sat down with Republican Congressman Michael McCaul of Texas. We talked about the ongoing government shutdown. But I did start by asking the congressman about the progress we witnessed this week toward Middle East peace following the Gaza ceasefire agreement. Here's our conversation.
It's long overdue, but, the Middle East has always been a source of tension. I was there in May, met with Prime Minister Netanyahu before the assault on Iran to take out their nuclear program. I was in there in August with the Speaker. But it's going back to the Reagan doctrine, peace through strength, that there will be consequences to bad behavior. I know he gave Iran 60 days to get their act together and wind down their nuclear program. But when they didn't do that, he wasn't afraid to respond. And same thing with Hamas. We're hoping Hamas has released all of the hostages living, not all the dead hostages, but we're hoping that they do go for this amnesty deal. They cannot continue to occupy Gaza. And so this is the step in the right direction towards what we call normalization. That's normalization between Saudi, the Emirates, and Israel. In fact, they were there on that path until Iran lit up its proxy on October 7th.
But if Hamas does not disarm voluntarily, how involved do you think the United States should get?
I don't think we need boots on the ground, but I do think we can provide various technologies, weapon systems to assist Israel in this effort. I really hope the IDF is pulled back into northern Gaza, and I hope it doesn't come down to that.
I want to ask you about another war that's cooking right now in Ukraine. We have an important meeting at the White House on Friday with President Zelenskiy, talking to the president multiple times recently about upping the ante and the type of weaponry that Ukraine is getting. We're talking about going so far as to send Tomahawks. At least the president hasn't turned this down yet. Right. What would that mean for potentially turning the tide on the war, and do you think the U.S. should go there?
Well, either you're all in or you're out, right? Yeah. And I've never advocated putting boots in the ground, but providing the weapons systems. I was with Mr. Yermak this morning, who's the president's his chief, counsel, talking to him about getting more weapon systems into Ukraine, particularly air defense systems. I think this goes back to a similar argument. I think. The president's given Putin an opportunity to negotiate in good faith. Mm-hmm. He has turned that down. He did these provocative invasions of Polish airspace with drones, nuclear bombers close to the Baltics. This doesn't make the president very happy. I do think you're going to see a very positive meeting on Friday between President Zelenskiy and President Trump. And in addition, there will be discussions about secondary sanctions and also tapping into the frozen Russian assets to help pay for this war and help buy the weapon systems that I saw, with people like Yermak at this military expose we had yesterday. One in particular is a counter-drone measure that can take down swarms of drones at one particular time. 50 to 100 drones can be eliminated from the sky. This is the kind of technology they need.
A drone wall. It's incredible, some of the stuff that we're seeing from some of the smaller contractors. But Tomahawks are pretty old-fashioned when you get right down to it. Would the threat of a Tomahawk going into Moscow change the dynamic here?
I don't think it's going to go that far. I wouldn't advise that. That would be a little provocative. But I think you've seen a change in the narrative between, say, the isolationists in the White House. Now the president saying, I think Ukraine should take all of its territory back.
It's a 180.
It has completely changed. And I feel getting the emergency wartime supplemental bill both on the floor and passed, had I not been able to achieve that, I think Russia would be occupying Ukraine today, and we prevented that. The Tomahawks, it's a question of how you deliver that. Is that going to be from a naval warship out of the Black Sea? We do have a base, a naval base nearby in Romania that I've been to, and that could be one source of delivery.
Speaking of Congress, do you think there should be congressional involvement when it comes to Venezuela? We're seeing these videos come of the U.S. bombing boats. Presidents making these decisions. Do you think that, Congress should be making them?
Well, when you're talking about authorized use of military force, we do have the War Powers Act, and that does trigger a requirement with Congress. If it's a short military action under a certain period of time, it's not required to go to Congress. Now, having said, Julie, before I was chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I was chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. One of my first bills was to designate the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. I think that's what this president has done. I think Maduro and Venezuela have been a threat to Americans, bringing in these large ships of fentanyls and other narcotics to poison our children. And, I've had many of my children's friends die from overdose of fentanyl. And so I think he's looking at this under Article 2 self-defense, that he has every right to defend the nation from the threat posed by the drug cartels.
Well, I'll tell you, it would be an interesting event if Congress could pass an authorization at this point, because we can't even seem to fund the government right now. We're on day 15 of a government shutdown. I understand that you've decided to forego your pay while your staff is going unpaid, and a whole lot of federal workers are as well. There was an important ruling just before we sat down with a judge saying that the president does not have the right to lay off federal workers, as the White House has been trying to do.
Yeah.
Where is this going to end? Are you concerned about mass layoffs, furloughs becoming layoffs, and in fact damaging the economy before you can get this reopened?
I've never been a fan of government shutdowns. Anytime it's been done for political reasons, typically that party that conducts that loses in the political debate. In this case, we voted to keep the government open in the House. We had a clean CR that went to the Senate. The same CR, by the way, that the Democrats voted 13 times under Biden, which I voted with them 13 times, to keep the government open. I think we need to open the government back, get it back open, and start negotiating some of these issues regarding, health care issues and others, because I don't think it's going to do anybody any good. Yeah, I was a federal employee at the Department of Justice when, it was shut down in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And
so imagine if they laid you off right now.
Well, I was made an essential employee, so I still had to work, but then I got my back pay after that. But the fact is, I think all these federal employees will get their back pay. I don't think terminations are really the way to go here.
You're talking about gridlock, Congressman, and you've seen it all in your 11 terms here. So seeing yet another shutdown, seeing this happen, seeing what it really looks like right now and what it's like to work there, did that have anything to do with you deciding not to run after being there for 11 terms?
It's been a real honor to serve. I've worked on so many incredible things in the foreign policy space and national security space. I will tell you, it didn't impact my decision. There comes a time when you have to decide, or you kind of know when it's time to let go of power. I don't think our founding fathers intended us to hold on forever. But I will tell you, it's different than it was 22 years ago. There's more vitriolic, there's more hatred, there's more demonization of the other party. I always try to conduct myself in a bipartisan manner with my ranking member and Democrat, because I knew to get things done, I had to be bipartisan to get it through the Senate and get it signed into law. And that made my committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, the most successful committee on the Hill and most productive. I didn't get elected to yell and scream on the camera. I got elected to get good things done for the American people in a very important national security space. I'm very proud of that record. I hope we can get back to some of that. I think what I see today, especially with the shutdown, is it's very amateurish, very childish.
Yeah.
It's not very mature. And the American people deserve better.
Republican Congressman Michael McCaul of Texas speaking with us earlier today at Bloomberg. Coming up, Jamie Dimon says he will offer to help Zohran Mamdani if he becomes the next mayor of New York City. We'll bring you the details. And the government shutdown now in its third week with no off-ramp in sight for lawmakers. We'll discuss when we assemble our political panel next. This is Balance of Power, Bloomberg TV and radio. It's Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Thanks for joining us. Alongside Julie Fine, I'm Joe Matthews. We turn back to the ongoing government shutdown in a moment. First, the stories we're watching in today's Power Brief. Within the last hour, the president confirmed a covert CIA operation in Venezuela as part of an effort to ratchet up pressure on President Maduro. The authorization behind this action would allow the CIA to use lethal force in Venezuela, carry out a range of operations in the Caribbean, according to the New York Times. It builds on steps already underway, such as destroying boats that we've been seeing in the Caribbean that were said to be carrying drugs and offering a reward for information leading to Maduro's arrest.
The Department of Health and Human Services accidentally fired nearly 800 employees during the latest round of shutdown-induced cuts, a department official told a California federal court. In a court filing, Health and Human Services Chief Capital Officer Thomas Nagy said that, quote, data discrepancies and processing errors led to 1,760 workers receiving termination notices, nearly double the 982 that were intended. This mistake comes as the Trump administration continues their push to fire federal workers during this shutdown, a move that a judge blocked today for now.
Yesterday at Fortune's Most Powerful Women Conference, J.P. Morgan Chase Chair CEO Jamie Dimon said he will offer to help Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani if he indeed becomes the next mayor of New York City. He's leading in the polls. Dimon saying, I have to deal with the world I got, not the world I want. And if he becomes mayor, so be it. Mamdani has already held several sit-downs or private phone calls with executives, including Dimon, as part of a charm offensive to hear concerns. And Dimon's renewed commitment comes as the frontrunner in the November election has rattled Wall Street with plans to raise taxes on corporations and the wealthy to help pay for an agenda that includes free buses and free childcare. Within the last hour, the president reiterating his calls to investigate his perceived political enemies. Listen to what he said when speaking with reporters.
They have committed massive political crime. I hope they're looking at Shifty Schiff. I hope they're looking at all these people. And I'm allowed to find out. I'm allowed to, I'm, in theory, the chief law enforcement officer. But I have a very good, talented group. This is about something else. But I hope they're looking at political crime, because there's never been so much political crime against a political opponent as what I had to go through.
Said a lot today. Joining us now with their reaction to this story and more. This evening's political panel, Democratic strategist Kristen Hahn, partner at Rock Solutions, is back with us, alongside Republican strategist Maura Gillespie, founder, principal, Blue Stack Strategies. Ladies, welcome back. It's great to see you both. Kristen, I don't know your thoughts on this. The president is the commander-in-chief. To frame him as the nation's chief law enforcement officer brings a new wrinkle.
I think it's a wrinkle. I think it's scary.
Yeah.
You've also, when he talks about political crimes, that's terrifying. But also, I mean, if I'm thinking about in my head, like, what's a political crime? Like, you're committing fraud, you're using your PAC money in the wrong way, that type of thing. I mean, he is clearly using the office of the presidency to go after his political foes, and we should all be alarmed by that.
Should Schiff be ready for a knock on the door?
Schiff is ready for a knock on the door.
Okay.
Adam Schiff is a seasoned, professional, and he knows exactly how to deal with it, and he's fine with it.
Maura, I have a question. I'm wondering, there will be lawmakers that are asked, do you think that the president is the chief law enforcement officer? What's your reaction to that?
I would hope they would say no. I also think in that clip, he went on to say that he was the victim of the worst political crimes in the history of the world. I think that there are many people who would push back on that, one being, Navalny. I think that what Putin did to him, and you could go down a whole list of people, but it's just a little bit stark for him to make that comparison for himself. But yes, I would hope that members of Congress, respecting the Constitution and also the role that the different separation of powers has, reminding us and the American people that they stand by the Constitution and not just a blank check for whatever the president says and does.
The president got a little bit of blowback from a lower court today on his plans to permanently lay off, I guess I should say, or fire federal workers who have been furloughed. Russ Vought today promising 10,000. The first number we got last week was 4,000, but 10,000 workers in all. The court says that will be stayed for 2 weeks. If you're a federal worker right now, your fate depends entirely on the courts?
And, I think it does to some extent, but it's the third branch of government, right? And that judge also said that, they think that this will be found illegal in the long term. So, yes, in the immediate term, it's 2 weeks. I think that Russ Vought has wanted to do this for a very long time. There are a lot of things you can't do legally when it comes to the federal workforce.
But does there become a point, Maura, where this somewhat backfires, that people that are laid off, people that are frustrated, start to put more pressure on their lawmakers to end this?
Absolutely. I do think that members of Congress are going to hear from constituents, but more so, they're also going to be faced with the reality of the government shutdown optics. The messaging that's happening for Republicans has been that the Democrats won't come to the table because they're pushing this health care subsidies issue that, it expires at the end of the year, but they're, pushing for conversations to happen now. Right now, Republicans feel as though they've been winning the messaging war. But if these firings start happening, they're going to lose it, because it's going to look as though Trump and Russ Vought simply wanted the shutdown and urged the shutdown because they wanted to do this. And that's a bad optic for Republicans, especially Republicans in leadership.
I am still struck by how little the talking points have changed since the beginning of this whole conversation. We spoke earlier with Pete Aguilar. He chairs the Democratic conference, talking about the fact that Democrats and Republicans still aren't talking. But, Kristen, a lot of them are here. Hakeem Jeffries pulled back his members. A lot of Republicans never left, so they're just all walking around bumping into each other up there. Nobody's talking. Is that real?
So here's the thing about the Democrats. We're all looking at this from a political lens. A lot of these members, a lot of them are looking at it for like, what's going to happen? It's not the end of the year. It's November 1st when people start looking at their premiums changing. So the idea that they're going to blink or, whatever before then is, it's not going to happen. But this is really going to affect people's lives. And there's real concern about that. And when Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the party, we don't coordinate a lot on messaging sometimes, but I have to give him credit. He was like, it's all about health care, and we're all going to talk about that, and everybody's done it.
Maura, what's the breaking point here? You talk about the November 1st deadline, then you have people traveling for the holidays. So what is the breaking point?
You know, it used to be that when the federal workforce, but especially the military, didn't get paid. I do think with, services like air traffic control and things at the TSA, at the airports, that's going to be a big problem, especially ahead of a holiday season. Services that are not operating at full capacity. I don't think that Thune has necessarily asked for my input directly, but if I were to give it, I would say that it would be helpful if Senator Cassidy and Senator Bernie Sanders, who chair and are the ranking member of the Senate Help Committee, which is, health, education, labor, and pensions, if they got together this week, and started discussing, okay, how do we put together a package that would help with the Obamacare subsidies, put something together in good faith and show that they're making an effort on this issue, then that may help us to end the shutdown with Democratic support, knowing they have guarantees from their Senate counterparts and colleagues to do something about it.
The president removed a number of pain points from the calendar, as we've been discussing today, including paychecks for military. That would have been today, could have been an inflection point, maybe prompting some conversation. But the $8 billion from R&D money that the president has allocated for this only gets us through one pay period. I feel like nobody's talking about this. It also could turn out to be illegal. Not that his Department of Justice would act on it, but what happens in the next pay period? Do we have another inflection point?
Exactly. I think we do. We have an.
So I'll meet you in 2 weeks.
When you have I think we have an inflection point every single day, honestly. Yeah. I mean, you even look at, everybody likes to vilify government contractors, but a lot of government contractors with private companies who contract with the government, who are people who watch this show, are really impacted by this. Companies like General Dynamics, GIT, others, and they're trying to figure out how to pay their employees. They're not the devil here, they're trying to do the same work that government employees are doing, just on the private sector side.
But you keep talking about deadlines every day, and there's still this threat of deadlines doesn't seem to bring out any movement at all.
I think that once you hit November 1st, there's going to be some movement. But, at some point, the government has to open again.
Yeah. Hey, Maura, would Speaker John Boehner, your old boss, have kept the rank and file in Washington? Would he have members here?
I think he would, because he knows how important it was to show that they were getting work done, or at least trying to make it in good faith effort by having conversations. That has always been sort of what we've experienced. And, as a staffer, I've been through 3 shutdowns, the longest being the one in 2020, 2021. It's hard to express how stressful it was when it went past 30 days, because especially on the Hill, staffers only get paid once a month, and Hill staff don't make a ton of money. And so there was real concerns about people being able to pay their rent. And I just think that having sensitivities to that and recognizing your staff is there working essentially for free, not knowing if they can, make ends meet, these members should be cognizant of that, because they're the ones that are there doing the work for them day in, day out.
And Kristen Hahn and Maura Gillespie, we have to leave it there. We will see you tomorrow back here on Balance of Power.